Achtung, Jabos! The warning cracked through the headset just as the engine note changed above them. No longer distant, no longer ambiguous. It was the sharp, descending scream of Allied fighter bombers diving with intent. On July 18, 1944, south of Caen, the steel belly of a Panzer IV from Panzer Lehr Division vibrated as its crew froze in place. The tank commander, Oberfeldwebel Karl-Heinz Mertens, had survived Poland, France, and the early years of Russia. He knew artillery, he knew infantry ambushes. What he did not yet understand, what none of them fully understood, was what happened when the sky and the ground began to think together. The first explosion did not hit the tank. It landed 30 meters away, a 500-pound bomb punching a crater so deep the earth seemed to inhale. Dirt slammed against the armor like thrown gravel. The intercom filled with shouting. The driver instinctively braked, gears grinding in protest. Above them, Typhoon fighter bombers of the RAF's 2nd Tactical Air Force were already pulling up, their rocket rails empty, their job done in less than 10 seconds. Mertens lifted his periscope. Smoke was everywhere, black, oily, chemical. A neighboring Panther burned with its turret hatch open, flames licking outward like a signal flare. Then the second phase began. From the hedgerows, British artillery observers already in position keyed their radios. They had been waiting for the aircraft to mark the column, to force it to stop, to pin it in place. Coordinates were read calmly, professionally. Within minutes, shells from 25-pounder guns began to fall in a pattern that felt intentional, almost personal. This was not chance. This was choreography. German armored doctrine had been built around decisive movement, breakthroughs, Schwerpunkt, momentum. Tanks were meant to lead, not hide, but in Normandy, by mid-1944, movement had become a liability. Roads were death traps, fields were worse, and the air, once a neutral space, had become hostile territory. By June 1944, Allied air forces were flying more than 14,000 sorties per day over France, but raw numbers tell only part of the story. What shocked German tank crews was not just the presence of aircraft, it was the timing. Attacks came when engines started, when columns formed, when a unit paused to refuel. The air did not simply strike, it cued the ground. Inside the tank, the heat climbed fast, even with the hatches cracked open, exhaust fumes mixed with cordite and sweat. The radio operator wiped his hands on his trousers before touching the set again. His palms shook. He had heard the stories, columns erased in minutes, tanks flipped by near misses, men burned alive without ever firing a shot. They tried to move. The driver pushed the throttle. The tank lurched forward, 10 meters, maybe 15, before the earth erupted ahead of them. Artillery, close, too close. Shrapnel clanged against the armor like giant nails being poured onto steel. The tank commander shouted for reverse, but the engine coughed. A fragment had pierced the rear deck, damaging the cooling system. Steam hissed upward, ghost-like and mocking. For German crews, this was the psychological breaking point. You could not fight what you could not see. Infantry could be suppressed, tanks could be flanked, but how do you respond when death arrives first from the sky, then from guns miles away, then from infantry who know exactly where you are because both have already pointed? On August 7, 1944, during Operation Lüttich, the German counteroffensive near Mortain, this shock became systemic. Elements of 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich advanced at dawn, hoping cloud cover would shield them. It did not. By mid-morning, American P-47 Thunderbolts were circling overhead, thick-winged and relentless, armed with rockets and .50 caliber machine guns. Tank crews heard them before they saw them, a low, growling thunder that vibrated through armor and bone. Rockets slammed into lead vehicles, blocking roads. Bombs cratered crossroads. Then came the artillery again, adjusted in real time by U.S. forward observers embedded with infantry units on Hill 314. Inside a disabled Panzer, one crewman pressed his helmet against the steel wall, teeth clenched so hard his jaw ached. Another whispered a prayer he had not spoken since childhood. They were not cowards, they were professionals, trapped in a system that no longer favored bravery or experience. The Allies called it combined arms. To the men inside the tanks, it felt like being hunted by an intelligence that never slept. By the time of the Falaise Pocket between August 12th and August 21st, 1944, the pattern was unmistakable. Retreating German columns moved only at night, engines muffled, headlights blacked out. Even then, flares bloomed overhead, turning darkness into exposure. Daylight meant immobility. Crews abandoned tanks not because they were destroyed, but because to stay inside them was to invite annihilation. One surviving crewman later described the fear as a tightening in the chest that never left. Not panic, anticipation, the knowledge that at any moment the sky might notice you. This shock was not limited to Normandy. In December 1944, during the Ardennes offensive, German tanks initially advanced under poor weather that grounded Allied aircraft. Crews felt a dangerous optimism. Engines ran freely, columns moved in daylight again. But when the skies cleared on December 23rd, the old terror returned instantly. Near St. Vith, a column of Panzer IVs was caught mid-movement. P-47s descended in waves. Rockets slammed into the road, flipping vehicles, blocking escape. Artillery followed, shells bursting in treetops, raining steel downward. Snow absorbed the blood, turning pink, then brown. The cold preserved bodies where they fell. Veteran tankers understood then, this was no temporary setback. The Allies had solved the problem of coordination. Aircraft did not operate alone. Artillery did not fire blind. Infantry did not advance without cover. Each element fed the other, creating a loop that punished exposure and rewarded patience. For German tank crews, the shock was existential. The Panzer had once been a symbol of control, of dominance through steel and speed. Now it was a liability, a beacon, something that drew attention rather than commanded it. In the final months of the war, many crews fought on with grim resignation. They camouflaged their tanks with branches. They waited for night. They listened constantly, engines above, radios crackling, the distant cough of artillery adjusting its aim. They learned to fear silence, because silence meant something was lining up. And when the attacks came, as they almost always did, they came not as chaos, but as sequence. First the sky, then the guns, then the men on the ground moving with confidence toward a target already broken. That was the true shock, not that the Allies could destroy tanks, but that they could do it together, calmly, repeatedly, until even the most hardened crews understood that the battlefield itself had turned against them.